It is 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. The Prime Minister offers major concessions to Labour MPs to try to head off a rebellion over his welfare cuts. US officials released test footage to support claims their airstrikes destroyed Iranian nuclear sites, but Iran's leaders say they're exaggerating. 2 Metropolitan Police officers sacked over the strip search of a 15-year-old girl at her school. New concerns over weight loss jabs over potentially life-threatening side effects. Also tonight. Prepare your drone army, the new warfare warning to Europe, plus... Jeff Bezos and his fiancée are upbeat ahead of their Italian wedding, which has divided opinion in Venice. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through until midnight. Good evening. We'll begin tonight with breaking news, and we understand that the government has offered major concessions over its planned welfare cuts to try and head off a backbench rebellion. Ministers have been holding crisis talks with MPs after more than 120 backbenchers oppose plans to cut PIP, that's personal independence payments, and the health element of universal credit. Well, the crisis has marked the biggest challenge to the Prime Minister's authority since he took power. Well, let's go straight now to Downing Street and bring in our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue. So, Ali, what more do we know?
Well, look, it has been a pretty extraordinary 24 hours. This time yesterday evening, we said we thought there could well be concessions, and it looks like that is exactly where we have ended up. We, as you say, we understand that a major offer has been made by Number 10 to those welfare rebels, and that some of them are minded to accept. A senior source telling us that this is a good package with generous concessions, but it is up to individual MPs to decide whether they are going to withdraw their names from this amendment that threatened to kill the bill altogether. So what are we going to see individual MPs doing? Well, I should say in the last half an hour or so, we have seen a post on X from Diane Abbott. She has said that these are phony concessions that will not fundamentally improve the disability benefits cuts bill. She probably was not top of the list of those that Number 10 thought they might be able to persuade. I think what they will hope now is that this will take the heat out of this rebellion. Remains to be seen what MPs decide to do now, and also remains to be seen exactly what these concessions are. But it does look like they are significant. We think that they are around existing claimants of PIP benefits. So this was, of course, going to be tightened. The various ways that people are assessed, for example, around how they can feed themselves, how they can wash themselves. That criteria was going to get tougher. It looks like existing claimants are going to be protected, as well as universal credit, the health element of universal credit for existing claimants. We will let you know as soon as we have the exact details. Of course, I'm speaking to Number 10, trying to get the exact details, but it does look like some of those MPs are minded to accept. The government's problems obviously don't end here. There is obviously the question of money, the £5 billion that Rachel Reeves had hoped to save with this welfare bill, and of course the question of the Prime Minister's authority. This morning the Prime Minister's spokesperson was asked if the Prime Minister is in control of the government. Not a question any spokesperson wants to be asked. They said he's leading from the front, clear-eyed about the government's agenda. But this evening it is pretty clear that the government's agenda can be changed. They can get concessions from MPs.
Indeed. All right, Ali, for now, thank you for that. And of course, we'll be back with Ali should there be any developments in the government's moves. But let's move on to our other top story. And the Trump administration has intensified its efforts to convince the world US military strikes really did destroy those 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. Today, the Pentagon released test footage of the huge bombs used in the attack, with the US Secretary of Defense insisting Iran's nuclear ambitions had been obliterated. But in his first public address since America's intervention, the Iranian supreme leader said the US was exaggerating and that the strikes failed to do anything significant. Sky's David Blevins reports now from DC.
He's the defense secretary, but he's on the attack.
You want to call it destroyed, you want to call it defeated, you want to call it obliterated, choose your word. This was an historically successful attack.
Pete Hegseth's fuming over claims US airstrikes on Iran were of limited success, and he has the media in his sights.
Because you, and I mean specifically you, the press, because you cheer against Trump so hard, it's like in your DNA and in your blood to cheer against Trump, because you want him not to be successful so bad, you have to cheer against the efficacy of these strikes.
Go ahead, Tom.
His top military man came armed with this video. Not the actual mission, but a test of the bombs, demonstrating their power.
Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it. Here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. Two, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. Three, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points.
But Iran's supreme leader says the Americans are exaggerating. He was speaking for the first time since the ceasefire.
The US attacked our nuclear facilities, a matter that is independently worth pursuing for prosecution in international courts. But they failed to do anything significant. The President of America greatly exaggerated what had happened. It became clear that he needed this exaggeration.
This isn't just about what happened thousands of miles away in Iran. It's about the credibility of this White House. Overstating success or concealing failure would erode trust. And people want to know that the bombing last weekend was worth the risk.
I do believe there's an effort on the outside of this building to try to divide the president's team on the inside. And sometimes you have to look at these headlines and laugh, because I've been in meetings where I know these things are absolutely not true. And again, we do our best here, I believe, to try to push back and correct the record with all of you. But there is fake reporting. That's just the reality of this country, unfortunately.
There's a ceasefire in the Middle East and a battle for truth raging in America. The reality is, no one knows the full extent of the damage done to Iran's nuclear facilities. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
So, has the Trump administration offered a compelling case that Iran's nuclear facilities were actually destroyed? Our science and technology editor, Tom Clark, has this analysis.
It was a Pentagon press briefing devoting more time to attacking the fake news media than the attacks on Iran, but it contained important new information the White House hopes will support its claim Iran's nuclear program was obliterated. First, according to the Pentagon, a team had been studying the Fordo nuclear complex for 15 years prior to the attack. Satellite images showed what we initially interpreted as 3 holes from bunker buster bombs. Based on publicly available information, the layout of the complex, some 80 metres below ground, is thought to look like this, with access tunnels leading to the 250-metre-long main hall containing centrifuges for uranium enrichment. But the latest briefing reveals the holes seen in the aftermath were in fact the openings of 2 ventilation shafts targeted to give bombs access to the complex deep below. We're told Iran capped these shafts with concrete 2 days before the raid, presumably to defend the complex. Fuses on the bombs were timed so the first bombs removed the concrete cap on the shafts. 5 more bombs were then dropped at nearly 700 miles an hour down the central shafts into the complex below.
A bomb has 3 effects that causes damage: blast, fragmentation, and overpressure. In this case, the primary kill mechanism in the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware.
The Pentagon also revealed test video from the development of the 13-ton GBU-57 bunker buster bomb used, which they claim was designed specifically to destroy the Fordo site. All this is powerful evidence of a meticulously well-prepared and executed attack. But what was missing was any assessment of the actual damage the raid might have caused. A new CIA report, as well as independent analysis, seem to be converging on Iran's uranium enrichment facilities having been significantly damaged, if not destroyed. As well as Fordo, the underground centrifuge cascades at Natanz were likely destroyed, as were key facilities at Isfahan, dedicated to uranium enrichment and, crucially, turning it into its metal form needed for a nuclear weapon. All this likely taking years to rebuild, but key pieces remain, the largest being Iran's 400-kilogram stockpile of highly enriched uranium.
You have to hit all the facilities. You know, you don't get credit for hitting the ones you know about or the ones that are most famous. You have to hit them all. And so by my account, what's still outstanding is the material is still out there. There was no effort to strike the tunnels at Isfahan, which is where the material was originally stored, and who knows what else is in there. When we get to a situation like this, they surely have held things back for a rainy day. And it's pouring right now.
Irrespective of White House claims or expert counterclaims, the real test of the strikes is whether they force Iran to a negotiated end to its nuclear ambitions or ends up driving them deeper and more dangerously underground.
Well, let's go live now to the White House and bring in David Blevins. David, great to have you with us. So as Tom points out there at the end of his report, questions remain about whether or not these facilities have been completely obliterated.
Yes, those questions remain despite the intense effort from the administration, an effort that came in various parts. Firstly, they absolutely dismissed the report that leaked from the Pentagon a couple of days ago as incomplete and low confidence. Then they attacked the media, singling some journalists out by name for simply reporting the content of that classified document. Thirdly, they brought out the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as you could see in my report. He gave a detailed report of the mission last weekend. Those images related to the test firing of the bombs used were really striking during that press conference. And then fourthly, they played the loyalty card, accusing anyone who's questioning their narrative of being unpatriotic. It felt like the president, his defense secretary and his press secretary had taken control of the narrative. But this evening, the administration has briefed Democrats on Capitol Hill. And Senator Chris Murphy from the Democratic Party emerged from that meeting accusing the president of misleading the public in America over this issue. And another senator, Richard Blumenthal, says the word obliterated is far too strong. Anyone who thinks this debate is over has forgotten how long we've been debating Iraq's alleged weapons of mass destruction.
David Blevins for now in DC. Thank you for that. Now, 2 Metropolitan Police officers have been found guilty of gross misconduct and dismissed from the force over the strip search of a 15-year-old schoolgirl. A hearing found the search of the girl, known as Child Q, was carried out without an appropriate adult present at the school in Hackney in East London in 2020. Well, our correspondent Molly Malone is here for more on this. Molly, great to have you with us. Just tell us how we reached this point that these 2 officers have been dismissed.
Yeah, so this was a misconduct or disciplinary hearing looking at the conduct of 3 Metropolitan Police officers back in 2020 after a 15-year-old girl known as Child Q, to protect her identity, was strip searched of all her clothes, including her underwear, while she was at school, while she was on her period. She was wrongly suspected of carrying cannabis, but nothing was found. Now, we know that 2 of those officers were found to have committed gross misconduct and lost their positions, were sacked. As of today, the force of Metropolitan Police apologised today, saying that this should never have happened, that they were deeply sorry and that it was disproportionate. But you can only imagine the suffering that has been experienced by Child Q for 4.5 years now. We've actually had a statement released via her solicitors in the last few minutes. I'll read you it now. She said, "Someone walked into the school where I was supposed to feel safe, took me away from the people who were supposed to protect me, and stripped me naked while on my period. I can't go a single day without wanting to scream, shout, cry, or just give up. I don't know if I'm going to feel normal again, but I do know this can't happen to anyone ever again." Now, the panel had to consider a series of different things while working out what amounted to gross misconduct. So that was the fact that an appropriate adult wasn't present, the fact that senior authorization wasn't given to conduct this search in the first place, whether the search was inappropriate, it's deemed that it was. They also had to consider whether race was a factor. Now, specifically on the strip search, the misconduct hearing found that race wasn't a factor, but a safeguarding investigation back in 2022 did find that racism was, in its words, a likely influencing factor. And the hearing heard that concerns about drug and gang involvement had been raised initially by members of staff at the school. Now, I put it to the IOPC, which is the body that regulates police complaints, about this idea of unconscious bias. Is there more work that police and other authorities need to do to restore trust and confidence, really? This is what they had to say.
I think that there's a really broad consensus at the moment that issues around race discrimination still exist in policing. And that is not to say that there isn't progress being made, but there is a huge amount of work going on at the moment and a recognition within policing that more needs to be done here. So I would cite things like the National Police Chiefs Council Action Plan on Race. There is progress being made. There's a lot more that needs to be done.
So 2 police officers sacked for an unnecessary and disproportionate search on what was deemed a vulnerable child at the age of 15 years old. But clearly the community, Child Q herself and her family, feeling that much more needs to be done to really restore confidence, to restore trust back in policing and back in authority.
Okay, Molly Malone for now. Thank you very much for that. Now, weight loss jabs for diabetes taken by more than 1 million people in the UK have been linked to a potentially fatal side effect. The UK medicines regulator says the group of drugs that include Mounjaro, Wegovy and Ozempic may be associated with inflammation of the pancreas, which has led to death in some cases. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore reports.
It's a healthy diet and exercise that Lorna uses to help control her weight these days. She had tried one of the brands of weight loss jabs, which she bought online, and was initially thrilled to be losing 3 to 4 pounds a week. Then one night she suffered what doctors believe was a side effect to the drug, an inflamed pancreas that needed hospital treatment and surgery to remove her gallbladder.
My legs were shaking, I had the pain. Oh God, it was horrific.
Now she says the jabs just aren't worth the risk.
I went to bed absolutely fine, completely normal. And then 2 o'clock in the morning, I just woke up with horrendous pain in my stomach. I was sick because of the pain. I was getting a fever. I was curled over with pain in my stomach. It was like someone had just stabbed me in my stomach.
Lorna's not alone, according to new data from the UK's medicines regulator. It found 181 cases of pancreatitis linked to Mounjaro. 5 people died. And there were 113 cases of pancreatitis linked to Ozempic and Wegovy. 1 person died. There's no evidence the drugs directly cause the deaths, and people who don't use the drugs can also develop pancreas problems. But the medicines regulator is starting a new study to see if some people have genes that predispose them to potentially dangerous side effects. This scientist says the risks are higher in people who are using the jabs as a lifestyle choice.
The risks associated with being obese far outweigh any risk associated with these drugs. They're not drugs for aesthetic reasons. It's not a new weight loss fad. This is a medication in the same way that people would take blood pressure medication or painkillers. These are medications used to treat the disease of obesity.
Eli Lilly, the manufacturer of Mounjaro, said patient safety was its top priority. It said adverse events could be caused by other factors, including pre-existing conditions. Novo Nordisk, the manufacturer of Ozempic and Wegovy, recommended patients take weight loss drugs only for their approved purpose and under strict supervision of a healthcare professional. But Lorna says her experience should be a warning to all.
I've got friends now that are, going on it, knowing what's happened to me, but they just want to be small, they just want to lose the weight, they just want to feel nice again. And I'm constantly going around saying, you know, don't do it, it's just not worth it.
More than 1 million people are now on weight loss jabs with astonishing health benefits for people with obesity and type 2 diabetes. But they have become a social phenomenon, and that makes some doctors uneasy. Thomas Moore, Sky News.
Well, funerals have been held for 3 Palestinians who were killed after Israeli settlers stormed a town in the West Bank. The Israeli military says that dozens of Israelis set fire to property in Kafir Malik, and military and police were dispatched to the scene. Well, the IDF says a number of Palestinians opened fire on the forces who then returned fire, but that claim is disputed. Well, a warning that Tom Cheshire's report contains images you may find distressing.
A Palestinian village in the occupied West Bank, and dozens of Israeli settlers steal in, wearing balaclavas and carrying sticks on Wednesday evening. They set fires to buildings and cars. Caught on CCTV in Kafir Malik, the gang throws rocks and exits on foot. The immediate aftermath, with a vehicle ablaze. And then another video posted to social media with people looking on, and a gunshot rings out. This video reportedly shows Israeli forces arriving and exchanging heavy gunfire. The IDF claimed that, quote, terrorists carried out shooting from inside the village and that soldiers returned fire. We've not been able to verify that claim. And speaking to Sky News, a resident denied that Palestinians had opened fire on the soldiers. What's certain is that 3 Palestinians were killed: Morshed Hamail, Mohammed Naji, and Lotfi Sabri. 5 Israeli suspects were arrested. Munjed Nawaf Hamail was injured in the attack. His brother Morshed was shot dead.
They burned the cars here and started fires at our neighbours. We have many children and women. None of them stayed. Only me and my brother, with some other people who were here in front of us. I came from the inside and we stayed here. The soldier came from that direction and shot him. He, the soldier, saw that he had nothing with him.
This is an area of the occupied West Bank where many Israeli settlers have set up illegal outposts. Locals say they're trying to push Palestinians out of the area using violence. Today they held funerals for the 3 people who were killed. They carried them to the town cemetery, a forceful demonstration of loss and of defiance. And they prayed over their bodies. And today there were more confrontations in other locations as Palestinians came to defend their village, both sides throwing stones. And then this. Israel's wars against Iran, against Hamas, have dominated attention. This is lower-level conflict, but it is also deadly, and it is relentless too. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Well, meanwhile, at least 28 people are reported to have been killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes on Gaza. Palestinian officials say that 18 were killed in one incident as a strike hit crowds getting bags of flour that had been confiscated from gangs who'd been looting aid convoys. There was no immediate comment from the IDF, but Israel has accused Hamas of stealing aid. Human rights campaigners say 16 people have died and hundreds have been injured in nationwide anti-government protests in Kenya. Amnesty International says most of the dead were killed by police officers. It's now a year since deadly demonstrations in Kenya against a tax bill resulted in the storming of the country's parliament. 7 people have been taken to hospital after a double-decker bus ended up in a river in Hampshire. The bus, which was carrying 6th form students, crashed off the road in Eastleigh. South Central Ambulance Service says multiple units were sent, including 2 helicopters and a specialist response unit. An amber heat alert has been issued for most of the UK for tomorrow and across the weekend, with temperatures set to exceed 30 degrees. The alert begins at midday on Friday and will last until at least 6 p.m. Tuesday. It's the second such alert to be issued in as many weeks. Now, the EU's Defence Commissioner has warned Europe must be capable of building a drone army in case of attack by Russia. Military intelligence has suggested Russian forces could be ready to strike a NATO country within the next 5 years. And now there's the warning that Europeans will require millions of drones in order to defend themselves. Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins has this.
Far from the trenches of Ukraine, war is being reimagined. This German startup is developing attack drones to help defend against Russia. They can carry a warhead powerful enough to destroy a tank and can travel at speeds of up to 250 kilometers an hour.
So colloquially, we call these kamikaze drones, but in the business, they call them loitering munitions. And that's because you can fire this with a specific target and it will loiter in the air until it finds that target and then it can strike. Russia's invasion of Ukraine sparked a revolution in warfare. Facing one of the world's strongest militaries, the Ukrainians used cheap, adaptable drone technology to their advantage. Ukraine says its drone units are now responsible for 80% of Russian frontline losses.
It's all made for easy handling for soldiers, so you don't have to use any tools on the front line.
Ukraine is testing systems like this as it continues to boost its arsenal. NATO allies need to catch up. Are European armies currently prepared for a drone war like the one we're seeing playing out in Ukraine, which could be hundreds of drones hitting a city in a night?
Quite a lot of European armies start right now to develop or to purchase unmanned systems, and it's a good development, but it's all about time. How can we speed up?
And there's no time to lose. This is what a drone swarm can do to a city. As well as investing more in drones, NATO will massively boost air defences.
We see Russia's deadly terror from the skies over Ukraine every day. And we must be able to defend ourselves from such attacks.
While Russia's continued offensive means NATO members have agreed to boost defence spending to 5% of GDP, the EU's Defence Commissioner warns Europe must be capable of building a drone army.
The Russians can have around 5 million drones. So we need to have capacities bigger than those in order really to prevail. So it's a question is about millions of drones.
Drones are revolutionising warfare. NATO must learn to lead that revolution or risk leaving itself exposed. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Germany.
Now, a three-day extravaganza is getting underway in Venice. It's the wedding of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. The billionaire, head of Amazon, and Ms. Sanchez are to be married as well, as well as much of the world's rich and famous. They've descended on the Italian city for their nuptials. Now, no expense is being spared, with the costs reported to be in the region of £40 million. Well, the couple waved to onlook as they left their hotel to head to their pre-wedding reception.
Look at what's going on. It's an impossible city. It can't exist, and yet here it is.
Well, Bezos talked about how much he loved the city as the pair sailed through one of the many waterways by water taxi. But many of Venice's residents don't feel the same way about him. Protesters have complained about what they see as an example of the city being gift-wrapped for ultra-rich outsiders, despite having long struggled with high tourism numbers. The city's deputy mayor views it differently, though.
It's a private event, and we host every week event like this in Venice. This is just a political protest because of Bezos' maybe ideas or statement in the last month. But I think that is not up to the city to decide who can or who can't get married in Venice. We are not in Iran.
Well, congratulations to the happy couple. That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in our press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and the peer and broadcaster, Baroness Aisha Hazarika. Guys, thanks for being with us. Among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Financial Times. Its headline, Starmer yields to avert civil war over cuts to welfare. We'll be right back.